Growing up in Boston, I remember listening to my mother and my aunts talk about the marches they joined with their Nana Landrum, the courageous people they knew, the small acts of self-preservation, all that became part of a larger movement. They made history sound alive, close, ours. But when I walked through the city, I very rarely saw those stories represented in central public spaces. The monuments didn't show those histories. They didn't show them, they didn't show me. I was looking for belonging, for placement, for proof that our stories mattered here too. When I returned home from grad school, I was elated to learn that the Faces of Dudley mural had been refurbished and edited to include a portrait of Melnia Cass. I recognized then how much I valued that mural, as it was one of the only pieces of public art that represented the Boston I knew. Now, when I walk through the Boston Common, I see the embrace. I see the 1965 Freedom Plaza. A few steps away, I see Unbound. Those spaces are not just about representation. They're about repair. I rejoice with pro-Blacks murals. I am grounded in Marca 27's installations, and I respond to Jahari Ortega's invitation to play. They say, you belong. Your story deserves to be told here. You are seen, you are loved. But representation alone is not enough. We're not just telling fuller histories. We're daring to tell aspirational ones, to build monuments not to mythic heroes, but to the ideas that move us to love, to solidarity, to community. In our work through the Public Memory and Memorials Lab, we believe these new monuments don't close the chapter on the past, they open a window to the future. They remind us that belonging is not given once, it is built over and over together. For too long, our commemorative landscape has centered violence, wars, conquests, the folklore of singular heroes. Most of the Civil War memorials were erected decades later in opposition to the Civil Rights Movement. They weren't about memory, they were about control. So what does a contemporary civil rights movement look like? I think it looks like us reclaiming space. It looks like creating places that don't just tell stories of suffering, but affirm our right to belong, to be seen, to heal together. It looks like spaces where our children can run and laugh under the arms of history and feel held by it, not haunted by it. The Snow Country Prison Memorial is a project that tells the story about the interwoven legacies of oppression and resilience of the Native and Japanese American communities. At the opening this past September, many of the descendants reflected on the extent of intergenerational trauma and forced assimilation they had survived. One descendant remarked, "As someone who wasn't in the camps but grew up feeling their impact, I thought this memorial would give me closure." But actually, it goes well beyond that. It feels like a new beginning. This movement isn't only about reinterpreting the past. It's about designing the future we want to live in. Public space can be a form of protest, yes, but it can also be a form of agency. It can remind us that justice is not just the absence of harm. It is the presence of care, of connection, of empathy. The Gun Violence Memorial Project, a national memorial that honors victims of the gun violence epidemic, transforms statistics into stories. The object collection events, the site-specific activations, and each donated personal artifact reclaims humanity from abstraction. As the glass houses travel through cities, museums, and civic spaces, it creates a growing network of solidarity and advocacy. begging the question of what each of us is willing to do to end this uniquely American problem. If the monuments we've inherited were built to preserve power, then the ones we're building now must be about people. They're about belonging. Y'all can snap, that's okay. It's all right. They're about belonging, joy, and the radical act of remembering together. Remembering who we are and summoning who we want to be together. During the unveiling of the Embrace, Yolanda Renee King, granddaughter of Coretta Scott King and Martin Luther King Jr., reflected on how she could see the strength and unity in the sculpture and referred to it as Love 360. On any given visit to the space, I am encouraged by watching the tourists and families and children on field trips walk around the 1965 Freedom Plaza to read the names of local activists who are memorialized within the quilt pattern, some living, some ancestors, as a reminder of the power of our collective action. Since January 2023, the site has become an anchor for vigils, peaceful protests, galvanizing rallies, and legacy celebrations. The form invites participation, not just observation. The undercurrent of love means people don't gather at it, they gather with it. I've come to believe that space, how we move through it, how it receives us, is one of the most powerful tools we have for transformation. A lecture can inform you. A book can persuade you. But space will move you. Right now, we are doing the necessary work of expanding the narratives in the public realm. And in doing so, we are planting seeds that will allow us to harvest a public memory landscape where our collective values flourish. Eventually, the conversation will shift from, "Can you see me?" to "What might we do together?" So imagine with me for a moment a monument to migration, a celebration of movement as life itself, a space that transforms the narratives of immigration from crisis to contribution, from fear to flourishing, that honors the creativity, the languages, the cultures that migration brings, and reminds us that diversity is not what divides us, it's what makes us whole. Or imagine a monument to peace, not an abstract symbol, but a living counterpoint to monuments of war, a place that honors diplomats, activists, neighbors, and families who bridge divides every day, that shows us peace is not a moment, it's a commitment, a discipline, a shared act of imagination. And imagine a monument to care, a place that honors the labor of nurses, parents, neighbors, mutual aid networks, and everyone who has held the social fabric together. It would confront the inequities that have defined our systems of health and support, and remind us that care is not charity. It's the foundation of a thriving society. These are not static monuments. They are mirrors for who we are and blueprints for who we might become. We have to remain committed to designing opportunities for new relationships, for nurturing new collective capacities. And don't just look to the horizon. Look to your left, look to your right, look to your neighbors, to your caretakers, to your teachers, your unhoused, your elders, your babies. We have to see one another in order to see an abundant future. You too.